Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 169 of this weekly webinar. And we have given Adam a hall pass because they are going to celebrate some family member's 70th birthday, I guess. So they're up in Maine, I think, or something like that. But Adam has got the hall pass. Jack is in the Charleston office of Shoemaker. And then we have two special guests. We got Saeed Moghadam, dadgummit. You got him. I got him. Saeed Moghadam.
There you go.
And sorry about that, Saeed. And Jason Houseman. So we're going to be talking about what are the things that you guys can be doing to deal with, all of this mess that's going on out there. On one hand, the market seems to be in a bull market. Great. Wonderful. But I also know I talk to enough business owners that they feel battered out there too. Can't get loans, interest rates continue to rise with the banks, et cetera. And so what are some things that we can be doing? Hey there, Joe. Good to see you. He knows.
Papa
Saeed.
Joe is on.
Papa Joe's back on, man. We've been missing you. So we're going to be talking about what are some things that we can be doing to drive down costs. Yeah, you're not going to cut your way into greatness, but there are some things that you can be doing to cut costs that will actually help your bottom line and divert those funds to other places where you can grow your top line. So let me see. All right. So, yep, the chat is working and Papa Joe has, figured that out. Otherwise, we'd be hearing from him if it wasn't. So Jack, talk to us a little bit, because I was listening to this on the way in this morning, and Fox Business was really talking about the downgrade recently on the U.S., credit rating, et cetera. So Jack, talk to us a little bit about that and, what's that mean?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. Coming to you from the shores of the Ashley River, and it's not the Ashley Bridge. It's called the Ravenel Bridge, and it's where the Cooper River Bridge run occurs every year that I drag my family to, and many times it's on April Fool's, so they think I'm joking, and I'm not joking. We actually are going because we paid for the run. What's interesting is, I know when I end up at the gym in the mornings and the TV is not on ESPN, but it's on CNBC or MSNBC to talk about something of import, that you listen. And so, I think people are somewhat familiar as to how this works, but basically the credit rating at kind of a very 30,000-foot level is the same as your personal credit rating. And it is used to measure the risk of lending money to you, and in this case to the government, in order to do what it needs to do with that money. And so the ratings go from AAA down to, I think, D. And what happened recently is it went from AAA down to AA plus. So that's like, I don't know why we'd think that it'd go, just to AA, but it goes to AA plus. And, the impact to us, we're not going to feel it, I don't think, and I'm not an economist, but I think that we're going to feel it as much as others might. So you'll see, I think gas prices are going up and those kind of things. But so what's interesting is that there's only a few countries that have the highest rating. I thought there would be more. And I'm talking worldwide, and that is Australia, Denmark, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Singapore, Sweden, and Switzerland, and used to be us. And so we're no longer on that list. So then I went back and looked to see, okay, what was their reasoning? And I'm sorry, there's three kind of credit agencies, and Fitch is just one of them, essentially, that does the rating of governments, essentially, and their borrowing capacity and risk. So what Fitch said was that in their view, there has been a steady deterioration in the standards of governance over the last 20 years, including on fiscal and debt matters, notwithstanding the June bipartisan agreement to suspend the debt limit until January 2025. The repeated debt and limit political standoffs and last-minute resolutions have eroded the confidence in fiscal management. So that's basically what they said. And of course, as I've said before, depending if you're watching Fox News or some other channel, or you're listening to WBT or NPR, you know, you get both sides of the same story, but you wouldn't think you're listening to the same story. So I was like, okay, let's see what people have to say about that on either side of the aisle. So the White House was quick to disagree with Fitch's decision and said it defies reality to downgrade the United States at a moment when President Biden has delivered the strongest recovery of a major economy in the world. It's clear that extremism by Republican officials, from cheerleading default to undermining governance and democracy to seeking to extend deficit-busting tax giveaways, is a continued threat to our economy. And Biden's presidential campaign is calling the move the Trump downgrade. They also say it's a direct result of MAGA Republican agenda defined by chaos, callousness, and recklessness that Americans continue to reject. President Trump apparently said in social media, Fitch just downgraded US debt, first time in many years, wow, exclamation mark. The DeSantis camp basically said that this is the downgrade as a result of frivolous spending and ballooning national debt for programs like CARES and in the Inflation Reduction Acts. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe Nikki Haley. So apparently Nikki Haley is not throwing fireball cocktails at the other side. And I think this is accurate to her track history of being critical of both sides. And so she's basically saying that I don't know that our kids are going to ever forgive us for this. It's easy to blame Biden for that, but our Republicans did that to us too, and we need to acknowledge that. And then Tim Scott says, once again, the Biden administration wants America to believe what they say, not what Americans see. Instead of an apology, they offer nothing but excuses for crippling, and he calls it Bidenflation, new buzzword, that now taints America's standing on a global stage. So you have what the people in charge said as far as the ratings, you have what Republicans are saying, and you have what Democrats are saying. Ultimately, it's not good for us to have that rating downgraded, but I will leave the floor open to our banker who is on the phone, who is maybe more familiar with that. So our bankers, so I don't know if Saeed, you wanna, or Jason, you wanna pipe in on your perspective on all of this as well.
Well, I mean, you covered a good bit of it. I mean, it sounds to me as we're leading up to coming election, you know, there's a lot of both sides trying to posture and put finger pointing at each other, right? So, you know, it's not good from a global reflection of what happened. I believe if we look back, and it was in the 08 era to maybe 2011, I think there was a downgrade. There wasn't much impact, I guess, from that. It seems to me that this could be a temporary thing. I know Jamie Dimon was vocal about it as well, and he said he, you know, thought it was bogus that it happened. You know, all this is leading up to kind of where we are today. Like, you know, everyone said third quarter, fourth quarter, we're expecting recession and this and that happening, and we've had a great year to date. Stock market's been great. It seems like business is doing well, people are traveling, spending money. So we shall see. You know, there may be some things that are bubbling that haven't really surfaced yet, but yeah, that certainly doesn't give us, you know, a great reflection when we have a downgrade like that.
Yeah, and I'll fact check your because I have it here. You're right. 2011, Standard & Poor's, another rating agency, downgraded from AAA to AA plus, and apparently that's still the rating. So I throw that out there as well to say that, all right, we've had a AA plus rating from Standard & Poor's essentially for over 10 years now, if this article is accurate.
Yeah, exactly. So in the past 10 years, it seems like the economy's done just fine. So Yeah, it may be a little bit political posturing, it may be some, aspect to it, but at the end of the day, that's a macro level, and then we kind of look at our macro level. What are we doing to, in everyday life? Seems like things are, even in light of high interest rates, are moving in a decent direction, but sometimes you can get caught off guard with that, where you get too comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Saeed, where being comfortable, it can be dangerous because,
Yes.
I think back to when we started these webinars. This is week 169 of doing them, and that doesn't include, if we included the weeks that we took off, it'd be 170 some or whatever. But we didn't. Yeah, we saw some war clouds, looming on the whole COVID thing, but none of us suspected, oh yeah, we're going to just shut everything down, 2 weeks, much less a couple years, so,
Yeah.
And that's why we even started this thing, was because people were like, what in the world are we going to do? We didn't know either. But one of the things that we knew to do was tighten up your cash, get a hold on that, get your team rallied together, hunker down, and, pivot as you need to, but really watch your cash, which is exactly why we have you guys on here today. And I'm glad to have you back. The last time we had you on here was, I think, on September the 22nd, a year ago.
Yes, sir.
So, think about that. And we were talking about stagflation. That seems to not be as much of a looming issue. Interest rates are continuing to rise, and it is an issue for banks tightening things up. So if people are looking, and I know people that are looking they need capital for seizing opportunities, paying off and getting rid of partners, or they're doing another pivot. I know of a manufacturing company that's right now doing a massive pivot, and they're needing to do some alternative funding sources and that sort of thing. So let's talk about what the ERA group, what you guys, Saeed and Jason, are doing. Let's talk a little bit about, I've got a couple questions here that I want to hit you with, and then anybody from the gallery, because we've got 23 people on here right now. And I wanted to do a poll, doggone it, I didn't get it done. We had an all hands meeting that I had to run before this, but I wanted to ask and just kind of see, and you can hit us in the chat. That'd be probably an easy way to do it, but I'd be very interested in the gallery. Are you feeling bullish, or are you feeling battered, or are you feeling a combination of the two? I'd be very interested. Just hit us in the chat and just let us know how you're feeling. And we aren't going to call you out by name unless you want us to. But while people are doing that, all right, good. Bullish, I like it. Talk to us about what would be a good profile of a company that you can really help on some of your cost optimization efforts and driving down efficiency, or driving up efficiencies, driving down costs. Saeed and Jason.
Yeah, good question, Gary. And I'll preface it by kind of commenting on a note you made just a few minutes ago regarding access to capital. So what we're seeing right now is banks are tightening their credit windows. They're more selective in their process. We see a lot of clients that are afraid to leave their bank because they feel like the bank has their back. So there's not a lot of shopping for opportunities of credit right now. And what we're doing, and I think where we're supplementing that and where we're helping our clients the most, is that we're going into their supply chain to find them the cash that they need. So rather than relying on a third party all the time, it's like, all right, let's take a look at what you're doing now, and let's see if we can optimize anything within that supply chain and drive some of those cash savings back to the company. So you can actually make the expansion, grow the business, take on new opportunities, all the things you mentioned before. But when we think about profile, and I like to use mindset over actual physical profile of the business. We like to deal with people that are open-minded. Our best clients are usually the best operators of their businesses. They're top in the industry, and the reason for that is that they know where they need help. They look at things where they may have someone that's and we'll call him the CFO is like the quarterback. He can control everything and run everything, but is he the best guy to run the ball every time? Are you going to put him out there on defense? No. So the CFO is kind of the leader of the pack there, and then we come in and we'll pinpoint where they need specific help. So I think about we did a recent packaging project where we helped a client save over $600,000 a year on just over $2 million of packaging spend. So real good results, real solid results. And it was because they had made a bunch of acquisitions over the year, hadn't really reviewed their expenditures as much as they integrated their acquisitions, focus on integration of processes and systems and culture and all the things that are very important to make sure those acquisitions are going to be successful. But they knew that they didn't spend enough time digging deep into the expenditures of the business that were non-core to the manufacturing process. So when we got in there, how many suppliers do you have? And they had 80 some suppliers just in the packaging expenditure. So cardboard boxes, shrink wrap, pouches, whatever it was, labels. And we deployed an expert that had all that experience. And within that organization, they wouldn't have someone that had this specific experience because it doesn't make sense. If I wanted somebody to come in and review that, and our people are making $600,000 to $800,000 a year. The middle market manufacturer isn't going to say, well, I should hire a packaging engineer for $600,000 to $800,000 a year, and hopefully he can save me $600,000 a year. You can't justify that at most of our clients. So I think of it as companies that will have some expenditure to scale that we can help them out with. And leadership that is open-minded to say, hey, we know everything about what we sell. We don't necessarily know everything about what we buy. Bring in somebody that's got some deep category expertise to kind of help us sharpen the pencil there and get better focus.
You said something that I think is really interesting. Open-minded leadership.
100%.
That's who we love to work with too.
Yeah.
And it's because you can actually collaborate and get stuff done. But if you've got somebody that it refuses to be open-minded and look at other possibilities, they're probably not a good client for us or for Jack either. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Before we go a little bit further, and I'm not sure if everybody can see this, which I don't think they can. I'll read some of these comments in the chat, which are really interesting. And I'll keep all of you anonymous unless you want me to shout you out. If you do, let me know and I'll shout you out. But first comment, I believe the downgrading is a result of inaction by our elected representatives and as well as individual business owners. We can only react to what's served up to us. Our government, both sides, their inability to perform and reach compromise on issues will continue to drive us down. I couldn't agree with you more. It's like this, and you said it, Jack, fireball cocktails. I mean, it burns down stuff, when you're throwing fireball cocktails. It's not the United States of America is divided, which is it just kills me. So we'll do our part to see what we can do to keep knitting business owners together, because we are the fabric that makes it go. And yeah, we got to deal with whatever they're serving up. So here's another one. I'm bullish. We're a small business, and our business is growing like crazy. I've yet to hear of a small, medium-sized business that is declining or doing poorly versus the national media that's gloom and doom for the small, the S&P type companies. Yes, Class A real estate is down. Some of the macro indicators are meh. However, most of the small businesses out there that we're speaking with are growing. What do you see? We're seeing a lot of that, but we are seeing cash flow tightening in places, and it depends by sector. That's for sure too. We are blessed to live in the Southeast, where, I just saw that Charlotte Douglas was named the most efficient airport in the country, which is good. It also says, man, there must be some really bad ones out there. But Charlotte Douglas, by and large, is pretty good. Here's another one. I'm feeling moderate to bullish. I think there were so many different issues that influenced inflation, some going back 50 years, that the Fed's increase of the interest rate could only affect it so and so much. Put another way, labor rates will continue to confound the Fed, but at some point they will assume that this is reset beyond their control and take a break. At that point, we'll see patience and eventually decrease in rates. At that point, investment, et cetera, will pick back up. I wholeheartedly agree with the divided states of America. That's bad for us long term. Yeah, it really is. And again, what can we do? I think probably the best thing that we can do is incorporate common sense and common decency and lead by example. Because if businesses fail and we fail to buck the system, and if we can't, survive in spite of the craziness that comes down from Washington, then we're in real trouble, because then you've got families that can't make mortgage payments. And I mean, it's just not good. So anyway, really good insights and information from people in the chat. So thanks for doing that.
Gary, I want to share one thought about that. I think what we experienced with COVID is that, obviously we had to shut down, and then there was kind of the pent up demand, and everyone came out of the gates fast. It was like a marathon, a sprint.
Yeah.
And, what happens is a little bit of, all of a sudden the government provide all this money, and everyone kind of stabilized and it was able to prosper. And I'm glad. I agree with some of the polling where a lot of businesses are doing well. The challenge is now the banks have also decided that, pretty consistently, that they want to pull back on lending. So that could be a function of Silicon Valley, but access to capital, that's a key thing for businesses to grow, right? So if they're doing well, we're hampering them where there's limited access to capital, cost of capital is higher. That's where I get some concerns, and I'm glad a lot of people are doing well. But that's organic growth. But if they want to expand and we want to acquire, it may be challenged where banks may not be as willing. The leverage is that the banks are comfortable with are lower. And that's when I get nervous where, the private markets, private equity markets find those as opportunities for them to come in and buy, because a business and only can run it. They need cash at one point. If they can't get it, they can't pay the bills. Even if they're doing well, capital is critical for the success. So I think we came out of the gate fast, sprinted, and then now we're kind of putting brakes on people. And so that's the balance. They talk about soft landing, hard landing. To me, you got to have that balance there. You gave all that money, everyone got stabilized, came out of the gate fast, and then boom, now the banks are pulling back. So where do you get money from? Banks or private markets? And private markets usually have the upper hand, because they're going to, if it's equity, they're going to get a better price than they did prior to not having the issue with the capital.
Tom makes a great point here. It says business is cyclical. It's always the case that some will do well, some will struggle, no matter where the economy is. Change and chaos brings opportunity for everyone if we're nimble. Oh yeah. And we did see that. And, it's interesting. We just launched on the podcast today. I was a day late and it was my fault getting it up late, but it was with the Anything But Typical podcast, and we had Jeff Conway on. And I was really worried, like how's he gonna do when we do lockdowns, especially with a bunch of Ruth's Chris and higher end steakhouses. Like you can't do curbside, delivery and stuff like that. But he ran things so tight and they had to get creative, and they did it. But the people that weren't nimble, and this goes back to what Tom's saying, if you're not nimble, you're going to be messed up, man. Oh, Joe just hit in, angel funds and venture capital firms have tightened up requirements to qualify. Much harder for startups to get through due diligence. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Seeing that too. Good point, Joe. So let's talk about, first, there are a couple of things that I want you guys to address from ERA Group. One, I want to talk about, all right, so kind of sweet spot that's in where you can really help the most. But then there will be people on this call that are outside of that sweet spot that I want you to address. All right, so if you're outside the sweet spot, what are the things that they can still do and that they could be doing now to improve optimization of their costs and other things that they could be doing to just improve their bottom line and maybe even cash flow?
Jason, I'll let you cover the first part, but if you want me to cover the second part about, where outside of, say it's not our sweet spot, right? Jason and our philosophy is we want to serve and guide and help people. We don't say, oh, just because you're not in the right box, we can't help you. But what I would tell them is, I always tell business owners, it's your team internally and externally are really important for your success. Having a good eye on your financials, understanding where the spends are. Even though it may not be a spend that we go after or an industry that may cover, everyone can be intentional about understanding where they're spending money. And even in times that things are going well, maybe they're making money, it's good to take a step back and do a kind of a State of the Union review of the business, maybe a quarterly, monthly. Sit down with, be intentional with your CPA firm and meet with them and talk through kind of what challenges you may be facing. If you're looking to grow, make sure that you're reporting enough income to make sure that you can qualify for that. But really, house in order from a standpoint of your people, your spend. And, as a CFO, a retired CFO told me, the pathway to prosperity is through growth, right? At the end of the day, we got to continue to drive growth, but looking at our house and seeing how things are working. Do we have the right partners? Do we have the right advice from those partners? So it's not always just price driven. It's really, what is the quality of that advice helping me? Having a great legal counsel representation like Jack Santaniello that we lean on for clients that we work with. Joe Farrell just mentioned SWOT analysis. Absolutely. Taking time to be intentional about that really helps a business owner kind of go through these different cycles. Now, I'll let Jason share a little bit about kind of the industries that we find that we have the most impact on, but we are fairly broad, sector agnostic, but there's some industries we do cover more so than others.
Yeah, no, from an industry perspective, we do a lot in manufacturing, we do a lot in healthcare, we work with distribution, even service businesses. But, to kind of pile on to what Saeed just said, rely on your trusted advisors. We have two represented on this call with, your CPA and your attorney should be your highest trusted advisors because they're absolutely looking out for your best interests. Throw your banker and your insurance rep in there too, because those are guys that you need to rely on to help guide you make decisions. But as far as, when we're in a project and we determine that, maybe that client is too small or, they don't have an expenditure that scales enough to warrant a project, we'll help them out anyway. But, some of the things we see are, something we call maverick spend. When we're setting up a project for someone or we set up a program for someone and we say, all right, you were doing it this way, do it this way now, and make sure your whole team adheres to that. If these maverick spends where someone say, all right, yeah, I know we buy it from them, but this guy sends me to Panthers games, I should really be buying it from him. make sure you're paying attention to that stuff. Keep people on a program, keep them accountable for it. Make sure the contracted terms that you signed with your suppliers, they're adhering to them. Make sure that they didn't make some mid-contract change on you or start increasing pricing without notification or without it being warranted. Keep them to the terms that they agreed to, because that's really where you're gonna get your savings. Make sure if a price increase comes through, it's justified and warranted. If it's something that's non-contractual and they say, hey, we're going to increase the price of your corrugated from $1 to $1.25, make sure that that's based on an index. Make sure they're not just out there with a money grab. Come back to them, renegotiate that price, or if need be, take it to a competitor and get some market data on it. Another thing we see a lot is our clients don't take rebates. I had a large engagement with a not-for-profit, and we were providing services for linens. So they were getting their bed sheets and towels and everything. And we saved them a lot of money. And then in looking at it, we actually saved them more money because they weren't claiming rebates that they could get, which was something you would think might be obvious, but when you're running an organization, you're maybe not paying attention to the small things like that. Sticking with strategic objectives, as long as your objective is to drive efficiency and cost and optimize in the categories that you're in, make sure that it's well communicated and people are adhering to that, and they understand the suppliers are important, and to keep them on your good side, and make sure that everything is aligned with where you're trying to take that project. Another thing we see a lot is buying for price versus value. Don't always take a cheaper price just because it looks good on the P&L. If it creates waste or causes problems or inefficiency in the process, it's not something you should take on, because the unknowns may not be worth the upside. In our projects, we're always giving our clients the option to say, look, here's a new way you could be doing it. I would try it out before you commit to it, but are the savings worth the risk of change? Then the last thing I would say is innovation. Pay attention to innovation. I do a lot of projects for ERA on the banking side, and when we have a client that comes to us and says, look, here's a way we do business now, we'll really dig into the treasury services and the processes and say, is this the most optimal way to do it? Not as the price in market, because the prices, they fluctuate from institution to institution. But when we come back and say, these prices are, off market by this much, but, you could also be doing, this instead of that. And, I'll use the example. We had a client that had 3 lockbox accounts. It was another non-for-profit in the healthcare space. So kind of hit on 2 of our industries. And, we questioned them on it, we got some answers, and, the best answer for us is it's that way because it's the way it's always been. And, right away, we know that's an opportunity. So worked with the bank, implemented a better solution, eliminated 2 of the lock boxes, created some coding that didn't cost them any more money, and, saved them thousands of dollars per month just on that. So there are always ways that you can do what we do, and anybody can do what we do. It's just, are you going to take the time? Are you going to put the effort into it? And do you have the expertise in that category to make sure you're going to optimize, what you're buying and how you're doing business with that supplier?
So if somebody says, man, that sounds interesting, probably, I'm running around with my hair on fire because all those cocktail, fireballs that Jack is talking about. But yeah, I don't even know where to begin. If somebody wants to engage somebody like you, like, how does that work? How do you guys get paid, et cetera? Like that would be real helpful, I think.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we take a holistic approach to all expenditures. So we will take general ledger or previous 12 months payables data and kind of sort it out. We call that an expense review. So we'll do that, free of cost to our clients, because we're just saying, all right, here's where you spend all your money. Here are the categories that align with our capabilities. Our general savings rates are, X% to X%. So we won't know specifically until we get into the details, but we can provide that report back. And sometimes that report alone has a lot of value to our clients, because they'll say, I had no idea that I had 85 suppliers for packaging. And sometimes they're like, yeah, I know this is a pain. We just don't have the time. We don't have the experience in this, so a lot of it is like, all right, how do we get into this? So once we've presented that and they decide they want to work with us, it's pretty straightforward. We look at, here's what you spent before. Here's the pricing we can get you, or either the exact item from the same supplier, or a new supplier, or an alternative product set that meets your quality and value standards. And then we engage, say they'll choose which way to go. So they make all the decisions, we do all the work. And at the end of it, we just share in the savings. So once they've started procuring whatever it is from their new vendor, we'll get an invoice, we'll compare it to what the baseline pricing was or what they were paying before, and then we'll bill them based on a percentage of those savings. So our projects tend to be very cash flow positive to our clients, and risk-free, because if we don't save you any money, we either tell you good job, or we say, look, there's not enough in here to warrant a full project, but here are a few steps you could take, or a few vendors you could consider if you wanted to reduce those costs. So we don't tend to deliver bad news unless it's bad news for us, which is we can't save you any money because you're already doing a great job.
And oftentimes, Gary, we're working with the CFO that may have a stakeholder in the company, or sometimes not. And what we're thoughtful about is we also want to make sure that we're not going to go in there and try to make them look like they have not been doing a good job. Our goal is to be part of their team. It could be another set of eyes and ears to identify some areas that we can help them with their busy day as it is today. They may even think that they already know, hey, listen, I need some help here, and been wanting to get to it, but the priority list is not there yet, and it just gets moved down the road. So we're big on collaborating with them, and they may have a stakeholder in the company, may not, but our goal is to be a partner, not someone that says, oh, shame on you, you shouldn't have done this, and go tell on them. That never works well. So there's got to be an engagement, and there's got to be the thoughtful, going back to kind of open-mindedness of working with outside parties. Yes, they're sharing the savings, but in our eyes, if they didn't engage us, perhaps they would have saw those savings. So that those savings that come to the bottom line, or reinvesting in technology or people, can greatly enhance the business direction and increase the value there as well.
Yeah, you bring up a really important part and point. And so for all of you guys on here who are the CEOs, the visionaries, the leaders, it's incumbent upon you to create a safe space for your CFO, so you don't turn them into a whipping post, because all of a sudden, hey, where you been for the last 20 years? You've been asleep at the switch. Well, that's not going to go well,
Yeah.
And it's a real fear.
Absolutely. And it's a roadblock. It's a roadblock because we get to the point like, wait a minute, my job's online potentially here. And you know what? I'm going to find reasons why we can't do this. We're too busy, or is this something that filters? So I think that's a great point to bring up, that we got to embrace that, where as we're in the fast world of change and technology, there's things that come up that can be done differently. Not that your CFO is incompetent, is that he or she may not be aware that there's a different approach, or because of our ability to have buying power, because of our aggregate client spend that we have, and we're able to get you a much better pricing. The CFO could have done it 100 times over, but they didn't have the aggregate pricing, so they couldn't get it, or they don't have the time to figure that out. So I think that's a great point, to give them the comfort. Hey, listen, if you ever see an opportunity for us to do something different, someone else points it out, make them feel comfortable that they're not going to lose their job over it. That's a big one.
Yeah.
I think it plays on the open-mindedness. So, our best clients don't have egos. They're looking at this like, don't be an impediment to progress because you decided like, oh no, that's all me. Like I will tell you some of my clients that are, and our clients that are the, best CFOs in the business are very open-minded to say, look, this isn't something we have we don't have experience in this. We don't have expertise in this. And we certainly don't have time for it. So come in and take a look. And those are our best projects. And those are the best CFOs in the business.
I had a client that said, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And
Yeah,
the point
great one.
is, you've got to have somebody that's on the outside that knows what they're doing, that has a clean perspective, and they don't have the inertia of all of the legacy. Yeah, we're fighting fires every day. And I think that is an important mindset for a CFO, a CEO, especially CEO, to have, so that you can explore other opportunities. And the one thing that I would also add to this thing as another, thing to consider is, I've seen this way too many times in some pretty good sized companies where they hadn't done profitability analysis by SKU or by client. They just assumed a bunch of stuff because inertia. Yeah, we're fighting fires every day. And I will always push them, like, when's the last time that you really did a deep dive on all of those things, your SKUs as well as your key clients, and you tiered those key clients? Well, we know. I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you prove it? And why don't you do it? And what's an amazing thing, I saw a client, their biggest client, they had concentration risk, 25%, a little over 25% was locked up in this one humongous builder. And they were terrified to ever give any price increases. And we found out that they were losing $35 per invoice. And they had a lot of invoices because they were doing a lot of work on each time they opened up a new lot. And, they're building a bunch of houses. So each one of those house projects, they lost $35. Like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so, but when they had the data, and they could have said, well, gosh, CFO, why weren't you doing this? Because he's fighting fires every day.
Yeah.
That's the reason. But then they did it, and they realized, dadgummit, it's 25% of our business. And I said, if they go away, they're doing you a favor. If they abide by your price increases based on data, they'll do you even more favor. And they did. And yes, and this is a big national builder. They don't like price increases, but they had data and they needed this vendor. Yeah, there were others, but these guys were really good. So I just think, if you haven't done a profitability analysis in the last quarter, much less, I've seen this where it'd been years. You really need to be doing it.
Yeah, Gary, can I pile on that? Unless the valuation of your business is based on a revenue multiple, you should absolutely not have revenue goals. It makes no sense.
Yeah, that's right.
It's about the money you put to the bottom line, not the money. The money on the top line is just bragging rights. It doesn't do you any good at the end of the day, unless you're a software business where it's all about the revenue multiples.
Yeah, Joe, I love your comment. You got to have a willingness to fire customers and or suppliers. Yes, and amen to that. And it's got to be based on we at BGW. We created a thing called the lizard list, and the lizard list we found 500 client families that are on our lizard list, and they are the wrong size or extremely unprofitable because we hadn't done it either, or they didn't say yes and yes and please and thank you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sort through those with the team owners, and like, here's the data. What are you going to do about it? you know, can we right size them? But if they're really problem children, it doesn't matter how much money you make off them, they need to go, because if they're burning your people out, wrong. You know, if culture really does matter, and a lot of our clients say, yeah, it does. And a lot of people that are on this call every week, it does matter to them. You've got to defend your people.
Yeah.
But then you can fire clients and in a graceful way, and to realize, hey, you know, we've moved on and we're not the right fit. Can we help them find the right fit?
Yeah.
And we really, we take it to that extra mile. And even when I'm talking to a prospect, if they're not the right fit, I'll know right away, very early, and I'll connect them to somebody that it is. You know, they're good people. We're just not the right fit. So,
Yeah, and I think that's a big one, Gary, where you know, as an owner, you really show that your people are your most important asset. Without people, when a product or service you're delivering, if you don't have great people delivering, it's hard to really make a long-lasting business. And I do give a big shout out to Joe and his son of what they do at Quality Data, the intentionality about the culture they build, the people they bring in, the diversity they bring in there, the constant thinking of what can we do differently to better, you know, we're selling this product to banks. Okay, great. But how do we get there? And how do we create something that people call home when they leave there? But that's part of that mindset where, you know, they know their people are important, but they also know what they don't know everything. And so they get the right CPA, the right banker, the right attorney, and really are intentional about a thoughtful process about what do I want to do to make my business the most efficient. That's what Jason and I are really after. Helping businesses continue, you know, that family-owned, founder-led small business that's looking to grow. How do we help them steer in the right direction? Jack and I work on engagements together, helping businesses in different aspects. Our biggest joy is that they're successful and we were part of that story. That, because, you know, that to me is a great part of what we do. So optimization really comes down to, okay, well, let's have a great company where people enjoy coming to, and if you're doing what you guys enjoy doing, and let us be a part of that and help you. If there's anything we can do, we'll do it. And if we can't do it, we'll get you to the right place. We're not just like you said, if we're not the right fit, we're not going to just shut the door. We're going to say, hey, you know what, these guys would be better fit for you.
Gary, if I want to go back to the open mindfulness of an owner, and also the comment of suppliers and everything else, that I see this, and I know that Saeed and Jason see this all the time, which is you have, let me tell you a little story. So you have owner, supplier, so customer, supplier, and they grew up together business-wise. And so they were very complementary business to each other. They made profits. They grew their businesses together like brothers or sisters. And then it comes down to, okay, so Saeed and Jason come in and they say to the owner, yeah, you know, you might be doing better with a different vendor or doing whatever the advice is to them. And the owner will come back and say, I hear you, but I have a loyalty to this person and to this company. And so I don't want to mess up that relationship. My response in those scenarios has been, I totally understand that, but put yourself in the perspective of it's time for them to give you most favored nation status with your purchases, and go make money off of someone else. You help them build their business and vice versa. So it was a symbiotic relationship. So, you know, let's discuss that, because we brought in some professionals who we've asked to find where there are efficiencies and lack of efficiencies. And they've told us that there are these other vendors that are selling, you know, similar stuff. And so, you know, and then you do what I would say the Peter Falk Columbo thing, or a teenage thing, as I said, my son does, which is just say, and, you know, what are you gonna do, right? Or similar to when I negotiate purchase of a vehicle, I go in there and I say to them, one of the first things I say is, look, I want you to make money off of me, but you're not going to make as much money off of me as you do many of these other people that are walking around here. And if you're okay with that, then we can proceed forward. So that's the kind of mentality that, you know, if an owner says that they are open-minded, they need to be open-minded to modifying relationships that, you know, they grew up with as kids and adolescents and now into adulthood of their businesses, essentially. So, and like I said, I'm sure that Saeed and Jason have seen a lot of that where there's hesitation because of loyalty.
We got a great example of that right now. We're working with a
the
large
applause button.
group.
Where's the applause button? Because that was great, Jack.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Saeed.
Jack, we're working on a project right now that this is exactly the thing. You know, the big roofing company, they're doing extremely well. Have a lot of key supply relationships that were there from the beginning, and you know, we're looking at those spends and they're sizable. They say, well, you know, we've been, you know, we're loyal to them, we've been with them since the beginning, and that's really off the table. But you know, as that business owner looks to, you know, prides himself really building culture and paying his top people a lot of money to really reward them for the hard work. I said, his chief operations officer is trying to figure out ways how to get more money to the bottom line without impacting the sales guys. Well, I said, you know, finding ways through expenses. I mean, you can't, if you're not going to cut labor and you want to continue to pay what you're doing, you want to get more, you know, to the bottom line. Well, that's going to be through spend. But he kind of shut couple of those pieces off. Now, at one point, we may circle back with our process. And sometimes in our process, we'll piecemeal it and we'll come through and show them kind of the impact, the people that we bring on staff that are industry experts. Once they kind of feel how we go through the process and not transactional, it's not down the throat, it's something that they've learned along the way and save money, then they're like, hey, by the way, you know what? The one that we told you that we're not interested in, let's take a look at that. So we also temper that where, you know, we dip our toes in the water. We want to show them the process, get them comfortable. And oftentimes that will lead to, hey, why don't you look at more? But we do run into that quite a bit.
Yeah, about 3/4 of our projects result in staying with the incumbent vendor at better pricing, service, quality, value. So it's all about, you know, making sure your market and most companies, like the companies we serve, they understand it too. It's more expensive and more challenging to get a new client than it is to retain an existing one. So, you know, price that market and, you know, being best in class, you know, you can't do much better than that. So, yeah, most of our clients, unless there's some sort of terrible customer service issue or, you know, they've failed in the past, our clients tend to stay with their incumbent vendors.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I would think when you do this humanely versus the antithesis of this is what happens at one of the big banks in procurement. You know, you got a bean counter that's just looking at bottom dollar. And I mean, this has been my experience in working with procurement at some of the big banks. They didn't know good from bad, quality from non-quality. All they knew was low price.
Yeah.
Well, there is a huge difference, but if you go in with this kind of humane and relationship-based approach with facts, I would think that you guys could even, you know, work with the suppliers that are working with these guys to go, hey, we could do the same thing for you, you know, to help them hit their margins.
Happens all the time. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we do not reduce price. We improve value. So if we go into a client and their, you know, price is way out of the market, yeah, the price will come down, but it's not going to be at the sacrifice of value.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. That's
a lot
good
of times
stuff.
also, Gary, some people that will talk to clients of ours, you know, for example, there's a client that does pallet manufacturing here in town. And our guys in Texas, Travis and Patrick, who are really big in, you know, working with clients here in the packaging, shipping space that may use clients of theirs that may use pallets. Well, oftentimes we'll also do is we'll engage them. A client of ours will become a vendor of choice that we can use for projects that clients of ours may need. Pallet manufacturer, they use it somebody today. So we really try to make it an ecosystem where it is a relationship, a family oriented kind of feel to the client, and find ways we can add value even outside of our scope.
Yeah,
So
our best vendors always look at opportunities that we bring to them, not as an opportunity to lose a client or, you know, negative effect on profitability. It's always, all right, well, this is great because now it gives me the opportunity to get more of their business. You know, what else can I be doing for them? You know, how can I demonstrate my value and say, all right, I was just selling you boxes, now I can sell you labels, or something similar in the 45 different categories we cover.
Yeah, that's good. As we're kind of rounding up to the top of the hour, if somebody, it's interesting just watching how people have stayed on to this, a lot of times we'll have a little drop off earlier than what we have right now, which is a good indicator for you guys. If somebody is interested and would like to kind of kick the tires and just see if you guys could help them or not, how do they go about that? How do they reach you?
I think the best way is, Jason and I always welcome conversations. If they're, the respective partner, CPA partner or attorney wants to engage us for a conversation, we'd love to just talk through kind of where they're at today. What are some of the challenges they may be facing? Maybe they're doing really well, but just want to take a step back and look at what's going on. Have them email us, send us an email to, Jason, just put in the chat. We'd love to catch up, grab a quick call. You'll do a Teams call in person. We don't say no to anybody. We want to help. This is our, Charlotte's our backyard, and we want people to be successful here. We do cover nationally, but whatever we can do to help the extension of partnerships we have with you guys, we're happy to do that. We look at our partners like you and Jack and others as an extension of us. And so if there's someone we can help, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, that's really good. So anybody grab in the chat their email addresses. And if anybody is technologically challenged to be able to do that, just reach out to me at gfrey@trustbgw.com, and I will be happy to connect you and give you their contact information. Really appreciate you guys jumping on and joining us today. This is important. We'll try not to have it go 11 months next time.
We greatly appreciate
before we have you back on again.
Grateful for the opportunity, Gary and Jack. Always great to reconnect with you guys.
Of course.
Yeah, pleasure.
And so it's been a while since I've done a little giveaway, and I feel like I have to emotionally vent on something that has come up for all of us that live in Charlotte and that are soccer fans. So because we won the last Leagues Cup game, we should be hosting that game this weekend. Instead, they moved it to Dallas, but there's a reason why they moved it to Dallas. And if whoever knows in the next 5 to 10 seconds, the concert performer who is coming in a week that basically kicked out the soccer game, then
Beyonce.
It's got to be Taylor Swift. Right?
Beyonce.
You guys weren't supposed to guess. That was for people viewing.
I already got
Jack won. Yeah, Jack got it.
Taylor Swift is not coming here. I already checked for that for my wife.
All right, fine. That doesn't count. I'll have to think of something for next week. I'm not giving you a.
I thought they were moving it. I thought they were moving it to Dallas because of the 105-degree weather out there. Because
it's not warm enough here.
Oh my gosh! Sorry, Jack.
What was the prize though?
It's a $10 Starbucks coffee card, but
okay, perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Tune in as guests next time.
Jack, we'll meet up and you can take me out to coffee, okay?
Okay.
I won't turn you down.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.